On Tech News Today, Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg promises to give away 99% of his wealth, but not yet. Plus, the EFF says Google is violating the privacy of student users, and Samsung announces a virtual reality web browser. It's all coming up next on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Wednesday, December 2nd, 2015. This episode is brought to you by Wealthfront. Wealthfront is a low-cost, automated investment service that's the most sophisticated way for you to invest your money. Whether you've got millions or just starting out, visit wealthfront.com/TNT to sign up and get your free personalized investment portfolio. That's wealthfront.com/TNT. And by Gazelle, the online marketplace for buying and selling used gadgets. Shop from a variety of certified pre-owned electronics or trade one in for cash. Give a new life to a used device. Visit Gazelle.com today. Tech News Today is the show where we talk about the tech news with the journalists who report it. My name is Mike Elgan, and our co-anchor today is ZDNet contributing writer Kevin Tofel. Hey, Kevin, what's going on?
Oh, not much. I just had a V8. I'm ready for the show.
Okay. So we were talking about tomato juice, and I was complaining about it. I mean, our fridge in the Twit brick house here, we have 2 refrigerators, and they're packed with all these different beverages. And there's just like a ton of V8 juice, and I've never actually seen or witnessed anyone here on the staff drinking this stuff. And I was wondering who was drinking it, and I was informed. I'm not going to out them. I'm not going to name names, Bruce. But I'm not. But it's just a mystery to me why anybody would drink that stuff. And then the chat room started talking about Bloody Marys and all hell broke loose. But anyway, why don't we go ahead and jump into the I could have had a V8. Why don't we jump into the news? Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg and his wife Priscilla announced yesterday that they intend to give away 99% of their Facebook stock's value as part of something they call the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. They also announced the arrival of their baby girl Max, who was born last week. Alex Kantrowitz is a senior technology reporter for BuzzFeed News and joins us to talk about this story. Welcome to the show, Alex.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
I'm so glad you're here to talk about this story. Now, you pointed out that the media are claiming that Facebook's money or stock, the current value of which is $45 billion thereabouts, give or take $1 billion, is all going to, quote, charity, unquote. But the press made that up, didn't they?
Well, I think that in the rush to figure out what exactly happened, many of them just assumed that all this money was going to charity. But the truth is a little bit different. So, of course, there'll be money that will go directly to charity, but there's also plenty of money that will be used, for instance, for advocacy or to participate in policy debates and even make private investments. So it's going to be a real range of uses for this money, and it's not just charity.
Now, if I can follow up on that, Kevin, I'm sorry to jump in here, but participating in policy debates, that's a euphemism for lobbying, right?
I mean, it's been left intentionally vague, I think. Who knows what it will be used for? Maybe it will be used for lobbying. Maybe it will be used to run ads on the air that show different policy perspectives. I think right now it's clear that Zuckerberg and Chan left this open to give them the most amount of wiggle room in the future in terms of how much they'll be able to spend and on what.
So, Alex, either way, whatever this is spent on, I mean, this is a potentially very good thing, and I love to see this kind of investment from people who have the money and can afford to do it. But it seems like they've set up this whole initiative as an LLC or limited liability company, less so, I guess, a charity. I mean, I'm sure you could set a charity up as an LLC as well. What do you think the advantages might be for doing that, or their decision-making process to actually do it this way?
Right, Kevin. Everyone's hammering me today because they're calling my story cynical and for pointing out that this was a LLC and not a charitable trust. I don't really see it that way. I think that there still could be a ton of good that can be done from this initiative. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a charitable trust. In fact, an LLC might give them a chance to be a little bit more flexible. And who says giving money away is the only way to do good in the world? You know, if they think that there's certain investments that they want to make that will end up being going to the end that they want to see, then who knows, maybe that can work out just as well. So just because it's not a charity doesn't mean it's not good. But it's not a charity.
It also doesn't mean that it is good. And I like your cynicism, and I like the debate that was launched from this. Essentially what happened is that Zuckerberg and Chan announced this, And then they were hit by a barrage of snarky comments on Twitter, followed by a barrage of people criticizing the snark, and so on. I, for one, think it's reasonable to give credit whenever actual good has been done, but not at the point where somebody says, I'm eventually going to do something good. I also especially think that that's a prudent way forward, given what we learned from Internet.org. Internet.org is a thing. I don't even know what it is. Unlike this company, this LLC, Internet.org doesn't appear to be a separate organization, as far as I can tell, from Facebook. And it appears that its main mission is, number one, to get people using the internet, and number two, to get people using Facebook. So Internet.org is presented as, and is generally believed to be, a charitable organization of some kind, but in fact, it seems to just be geared toward expanding the already enormous Facebook user base. Am I being unfair to Facebook and to Zuckerberg, Alex, or do you think that that's a reasonable position to be skeptical given what we've learned from Internet.org?
I think that a little skepticism is warranted. Hang on one second.
It's probably Mark.
I think a little skepticism is warranted, but look, if I was somebody who didn't have internet and it was provided to me through Internet.org, even though it's being used to achieve Facebook's mission, I'd probably be happy about it. So if I'm going to get money from this new initiative and it's going to help me accomplish some good stuff, I'll probably be happy with it, as long as it stays to activities that people generally can agree are good, such as curing disease, clean energy, reducing poverty, equal rights. These are things that Zuckerberg listed in his post as areas of interest. But when it starts to get into the policy debate, like another thing that he mentioned was he wants to help connect people. Well, that's very similar to what Facebook does. So I think that as long as it stays along some universal good, then people will generally be appreciative of it. But if it strays from that, then there's going to be more questions for Zuckerberg, and we'll make sure to ask them.
Alex, when I look at people like Bill Gates who have done similar things with their organizations and their money, they've been very specific about what they want to try and do. They've chosen a few key problems around the world, whether it be clean water, energy, et cetera. And you may have just answered this a little bit, but because of the vagueness that Zuckerberg has put out there with what they're going to do, have they added any specifics about what problems they might want to try and solve with this whole initiative?
So definitely the ones that I just listed. Those are, seem to be up front first and foremost, but who knows? Like, one of the things that struck me reading through Zuckerberg's Facebook post and the letter that he wrote to his daughter Max was he left himself and his wife Priscilla Chan a lot of wiggle room to be able to dedicate the money to pretty much anything. So you actually learn more in the SEC filing, or you got more specifics in the SEC filing than you might have gotten in that letter, which just struck me as very interesting. So I think that over time, we'll find out, and I'm personally intrigued to see where the money goes to. It's a lot of money, and I think that he'll probably be able to give more direction as time goes on. But I would imagine that it wouldn't necessarily be the best idea to, limit this effort's focus right off the bat. He's going to donate this money over the course of his lifetime. And so who knows, maybe something like clean energy right now will be a priority, but over time it might actually, progress might be made there, and there might be another thing to have the focus shifted to.
And of course, the vague generalities they trotted out are agreeable to everyone. Personalized learning, curing disease, connecting people, and building strong communities. We all want those things. The devil, of course, is always in the details. For example, Bill Gates has done a lot of great stuff around the world. He's also had some pretty wacky ideas. For example, one of his ideas for education was to put a camera in every single classroom and sort of crowdsource the monitoring of teachers and so on. And if curing disease means breeding a new race of superhumans using genetically modified techniques on humans or something, that may not be as popular as curing disease sounds. So we'll see what the actual ideas are. I don't want to be overly cynical. I don't want to be overly laudatory. We'll see what he actually does. And to the extent that he does good work, I think he deserves massive praise for that. Now, they announced that their daughter was born last week. They somehow kept it a secret for several days. And this child's name is Maxima Chan Zuckerberg. Alex, do you think Maxima Chan Zuckerberg would get past the real names filter on Facebook?
Oh, that's a curveball. I think that if she wrote Maxima Chan Zuckerberg, there wouldn't be any problem. But if somebody flagged her, she might have to go through the process like anybody else that gets flagged. So if you want to try it down the road.
I'm sure there are already several hundred of them by now after the announcement. Alex Kantrowitz is at BuzzFeed.com and on Twitter at Kantrowitz. Alex, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
Bye-bye. More news coming right up, but first I want to talk about Wealthfront, one of our sponsors today. Wealthfront is a disruptive service that's going to help you invest your money without losing a lot of money unnecessarily. They're going to save you money on taxes. They can save you a ton of money on fees, and we'll get into that in just a second. But I want to talk about the human mind and its inability to deal with the realities, the mathematical realities of investing. I'm always surprised, and I think lots of people are surprised when some couple when they're old, you read in the newspaper that they worked as school teachers or something like that, and they end up collecting millions of dollars, which they give to charity. How did people on a teacher's salary end up with millions of dollars? It's all about investment and how you do it. You take a long-term approach to it. You start as early as you possibly can, and you're smart with your money. And Wealthfront will give you that kind of intelligence. It's just built right in. We've heard from a lot of Twit fans who've used Wealthfront and love how they can diversify their portfolios and buy stocks from in-demand companies like Apple, Amazon, and Facebook, and they can do it all commission-free. Yes, you want to grow your money, but you also want to hang on to that money so that instead of paying in fees, you can plow it back into your investments and you'll grow your money even better. Wealthfront manages over $2.6 billion in client assets and has grown over 20 times in the past 2 years. It's the way to invest and help you sleep at night with financial security, knowing that your money is being smartly invested. Visit wealthfront.com/TNT to sign up and get your first free personalized investment portfolio. You'll see the customized allocation they recommend for your profile. And just for Twit listeners and viewers, if you sign up to invest, Wealthfront will manage your first $15,000 entirely free of charge for life. Join the many Twit fans who have seen huge success with Wealthfront and claim your offer today at wealthfront.com/TNT. LinkedIn yesterday launched its long-awaited redesigned mobile app. Kurt Wagner writes for Recode about social media and other things and joins us to talk about it. Hey, Kurt, how you doing?
Hey, what's up, Mike? How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Now, how long has LinkedIn been working on this app? It seems like we've been talking about this for a long time.
Yeah, we have been talking about it for a long time. I know that they've been working on it since at least late spring, early summer, but I wouldn't be surprised if it goes back even further than that because it's pretty much an entire rehaul of the product. And so, they have been talking about it. Jeff Weiner showed it off mid-October at the company's Talent Connect conference. And so, even for the last 6 weeks or so, we've known that this is coming, just didn't know exactly when, and it's finally here. So I know that a lot of people at LinkedIn are super excited. I don't know if users care quite as much, but it's long time coming and it's finally arrived.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing, Kurt. This was long overdue. I know they've been talking about it for months and so on, but in this age of social networking, it's amazing how long it's taken LinkedIn to really update their mobile app. So, if I'm a LinkedIn user, which I am, why do I want this new version? What is there anything interesting about it? Is there anything new about it that the older app or the mobile website doesn't provide?
I think the biggest complaint for LinkedIn is that it can be a little overwhelming. So you have so many different parts of the product, right? Your connections, your kind of your news feed type of thing where people are posting stories and comments and making recommendations as to what jobs you should take. There's just a lot of info. And so what this aims to do is kind of categorize or bucket that info a little bit better. You can see that there are some tabs, I believe 5 tabs in the new app. So the first one is very much that news feed type feel. There's also a private messaging feature that's been added. So before, if you had LinkedIn, you would have to in-mail people, which felt very much like email. It's a little bit more formal. Now they have like a back and forth similar to, Facebook Messenger or AOL, AIM, whatever you used to use. So it's a little bit more casual. So those are kind of the core features. I think the main purpose of this whole thing is to simply say, look, we have a ton of info on here. You have a ton of stuff that may or may not be interesting to you. We want to make it as easy as possible for you to find it. And there have been a lot of people who said, hey, this looks a lot like Facebook's app. And it does. And I don't necessarily see that as a huge problem because Facebook's been, perfecting its mobile experience now for years. I think LinkedIn is a very similar product just for your professional network versus your private network. And so in a lot of ways, I don't see why they wouldn't kind of copy what seems to be working for Facebook. But yes, they're also pretty similar apps.
The biggest difference, I think, between Facebook and LinkedIn is that Facebook has their messaging app as a separate app, whereas this has communications features built right in. Do you think people could use this app as their primary communications system, or does the other person on the other end of the line also require the app or a LinkedIn membership?
I think LinkedIn's too late to the game to become anyone's messaging app of choice, unless maybe you're an employee or you're Jeff Weiner. But I think Facebook has Messenger and WhatsApp, which have hundreds of millions of users already. And what's funny is that, Mike, as you pointed out, I mean, Messenger was part of the Facebook app for a long time. It's been a year since they made it its own app and allowed people to start doing things like texting with businesses. And playing games within that app. And now, for the very first time, LinkedIn's just having a one-to-one messaging experience built into their core app. So it just kind of shows you how far behind they are in the whole messaging space. So I don't think that that's ever going to be, but that's not what LinkedIn's about, right? Like, they don't necessarily need or want to become your messenger of choice. They just want to make it easier for when you find a great job, when you want to connect with an old colleague, make it easier to make that happen. If you can direct message that person really simply in a format that you're familiar with, you might do that more often than you would have otherwise. So I don't see this as being their big play. It's more just, hey, what feature can help out our users?
So, Kurt, since I write about mobile platforms and follow the app ecosystems, I'm curious, is this available for all mobile platforms, or is it specific to one or just a few?
So it is available on iOS and Android. I was hearing some complaints on Twitter that it's not available for Windows Phone. I don't use Windows Phone or know any people who do, but obviously there are. If people are complaining on Twitter, you are out there, and it doesn't seem to be available there, but it is available to the big platforms. And so anyone with iOS or Android, it should be worldwide, should be able to download it today.
Oh, those mythical Windows Phone users. I've heard about them as well. We've actually got a couple running around here somewhere, probably the tomato juice people. Kurt Wagner's at recode.net and on Twitter at KurtWagner8. Kurt, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, Mike.
All right, bye-bye. The Electronic Frontier Foundation filed a complaint with the Federal Trade Commission about Google. The EFF says that Google collected personal information and internet usage behavior information from students while they use Chromebooks or Chrome apps for education. Search Engine Land editor Greg Sterling joins us to talk about this accusation. Welcome to the show, Greg.
Thanks, Mike. Good to be here again.
So glad you're here again. Now, the EFF says this was a violation of the Student Privacy Pledge. What is the Student Privacy Pledge?
It's basically a list of rules put together by by a couple of different organizations, the Future Privacy Forum, among several others. And the long and the short of it is that private companies working in schools in the educational space where they're providing products to students are not going to track them, are not going to profile them, are not going to pass data to third parties for advertising purposes. They're supposed to use, everything they're doing is supposed to be for authorized educational purposes or authorized by the parent or student, him or herself. So there's a sort of narrowly circumscribed set of proper uses for data and student interaction with these services.
Craig, I've been a longtime Chromebook user and fan, and this is really surprising to me, number one, and it's also concerning. I constantly read about schools adopting Chromebooks in their, educational systems and so on. But I think back to, I want to say it was 1998 that the Child Online Privacy Protection Act passed, and it was effective in the year 2000. And if I recall, that says that you can't use or collect data for advertising purposes for children age 13 and under without express permission. I'm assuming this completely violates that act, and I'm wondering if there's going to be any fines or penalties as a result of that.
You're saying the Google activity that EFF is complaining about?
Mm-hmm.
Hypothetically, there could be fines, but what EFF has asked for is a purging of all the data and an injunction against Google doing this set of data collection practices in the future. Google, by the way, maintains that it hasn't violated any rules, and that it is compliant with all of the applicable privacy provisions.
And so that leads us to this kind of stalemate where the EFF says one thing and Google says another, and they've got it in the hands of the FCC to sort it all out. What's your opinion, Greg, on the EFF complaint and Google's response?
There's probably something here, because I don't think EFF does things frivolously. So I suspect they discovered something that they feel very strongly, obviously, violates these privacy policies. And Google is taking the position that it hasn't done anything impermissible. I think we'll see some of the changes that EFF is looking for come from Google, and the FTC may issue some, there may be some sort of settlement or some public statements that are issued. I think in the end, it's not going to really do a lot of damage to Google. It is a kind of a black eye. It's kind of an embarrassing thing, but I think Google will probably comply with most of what EFF is looking for.
Yeah, and on their side, I think people who are student-aged tend to not care about privacy, about these things as much as us older folks. So that will help them with their black eye problem. Greg Sterling is at searchengineland.com and on Twitter at gsterling. Greg, thanks for coming on the show and explaining all this to us.
Thanks, Mike.
All right, bye-bye. User numbers on Google Plus are very hard to come by. It's a pretty closed system, and the numbers for non-public shares are perfectly unknowable. The activity level on Google's social network is also a controversial topic, with many people saying it's a complete ghost town and others saying it's the best social network ever. But now a London-based company called the Global Web Index conducted a study about social networking activity and popularity and wrote about it in a blog post that they entitled, "Google Plus is more popular than you think." Jason Mander is head of trends at Global Web Index and joins us now from London. Jason, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Mike.
So glad you're here. Now, before we get into your report, can you tell us about Global Web Index and what that company does?
Sure. So Global Web Index runs the world's largest survey of digital consumers. Each year, we're speaking to about 200,000 people in depth across 34 different countries about everything they're doing online, all of their digital behaviors. So that's everything from the smartphones that they own to whether they're blocking ads when they use the internet, right down to all of the social networks they use and what they think about those various social platforms.
So, Jason, as Mike had alluded to, and both Mike and I should disclose, we're pretty big Google Plus users, and we don't think it's a ghost town, but so many people do. What did the survey find? Are there people using this service, or we just don't know what we're talking about?
I mean, Google Plus has had some pretty difficult headlines. Lots of people are willing to assume that it's a ghost town and that it's going to be shut down. The fact that Google broke out so many of its most popular services into standalone features like Hangouts hasn't helped that perception. But actually, our research across 34 countries shows that it's still a major contender. Obviously, you've got Facebook way out front, but then there's that second tier where you have Instagram, you have Twitter, and you definitely have Google Plus as well. Sure, usage does vary between regions, but actually there's a user base in pretty much most countries that we surveyed.
Now, we get a huge amount of our information on technology from people like me and people like Kevin, American tech journalists. And the problem with that, as far as Facebook is concerned, is that American tech journalists are better versed at what's happening in the U.S., and also what's happening among our peers, among the press. The press loves Twitter, and they do not like Google Plus in general, as a general rule. Now, one example of this is, for example, you have North America and what you call Latin America. So I assume that Mexico is part of the Latin America number. The number of users in Latin America is double what it is in North America. Why is that, do you think?
By percentage, yes, it's double. I think a key thing to remember there is that internet penetration rates are very different across those markets, whereas in a country like the US, most people now are internet users. It can still be lower in LATAM, in APAC, in the Middle East and Africa. So we're talking about younger user bases, and it won't surprise you to hear that the younger you are, the more likely you are to use social networks, but particularly the more likely you are to use multiple networks. So the multi-networking trend favors Google Plus. It's still very much much in the mix as one of those networks that people like to use. Also, I think it's worth remembering that you're quite right. Lots of the tech headlines come out of the US, out of the UK, and Google Plus has never been particularly popular in those markets, and hence the stories we tend to hear about it are coloured accordingly.
And I think that with the recent changes, people are talking, as you did, you mentioned that they've spun out some of the major services that were actually popular on Google+, including Hangouts and also the photo services. Those are now completely separate. But I do think that I've noticed a subtle shift that Google has made that people aren't really talking about much, which I think has probably made it a lot more popular. And that is when you're looking at a post, anyone's post, and you choose to share it. In the past, when you shared a post, it just said, okay, you're going to share it on your profile on Google+. Now, when you choose to share a post, it says, okay, you want to share it on Facebook, you want to share it on Twitter, and so essentially what they're doing is they're making it simple for Google+ users to put links out there on other social networks and bring people back into Google+. So I think that there's a subtle, behind the scenes, we don't really notice it that much, kind of effect where the Google Plus posts and Google Plus community is being subtly integrated with the rest of the internet more thoroughly than it would be, say, for Facebook or some other social network. So that's one point. But I just wanted to ask you one quick point before I let you go, and I know it's in the evening there in London. Taking everything that you know into account and basically everything that you've learned from your studies, how, and obviously Facebook is the #1 social network. There's no question about that, and that's probably a permanent condition. How did the social networks generally rank in popularity after Facebook? Who's number 2, who's number 3, who's number 4, in your opinion?
Sure, it's a tricky one. So you're quite right, Facebook is #1, although it's worth noting that YouTube actually has more visitors per month. But if you're talking about the social networks proper, among young Western demographics, Snapchat is one to watch. Among APAC respondents, particularly in China, but elsewhere in the region, WeChat is an important force. But if you're talking about global rankings, then at the moment, our research shows that it's a pretty close-fought battle between Twitter and Instagram. Instagram doing very well among younger demographics, as you'd expect. Then it's Google Plus and LinkedIn. And then completing the top 10, you find names like Pinterest and Tumblr, although they've still got some distance to cover before they could start challenging the top networks.
And where does Google Plus fit into that?
So Google Plus is typically 3rd or 4th in most countries, although in some places it does rise to 2nd position.
Okay, great. Well, Jason Mander is at globalwebindex.net and on Twitter at @TheJasonMander. Jason Mander, thank you so much for joining us today on Tech News Today.
No problem.
Bye-bye. Samsung yesterday launched a beta version of a virtual reality web browser called Samsung Internet for Gear VR. Addie Robertson is a writer for The Verge and joins us to talk about it. Welcome to the show, Addie.
Hi.
And I know you've got a heart out, and we'll keep this short. Now, what is a virtual reality web browser exactly?
So imagine a version of the Gear or the Samsung phone's normal internet browser, and then just put that in front of your face and separate all the tabs out. And then instead of typing on a tiny keyboard, you can either look at keys and type them with your head, or you can use voice commands, and that is a virtual reality web browser.
Addie, is this really an app that we need with VR goggles of any type, whether they're Samsung's or Google Cardboard or whatever? It just seems like it's not the right fit. I mean, it's almost like Google Glass I wouldn't want to use to view the web all the time.
What it really seems to be aimed at here is letting you access things like YouTube, video that people might want to see. YouTube has virtual reality video, but that they don't have an app for on the Gear VR. That's what it was pitched with, that it supports all kinds of video. And so I think that's really where they're going here.
Jason, the producer of our show here, is a huge Gear VR user and fan, and he loved this browser. He really enjoyed using it. He said he, in fact, watches Twitch shows on it now. So there's one vote for this. Now, Addie, is this the beginning of a category? Will all the VR platforms have some sort of web browser, do you think? Or is there a case to be made for a web browser that's universal to all of the platforms? What do you think is going to happen here?
It seems unlikely that there would be a universal web browser, given that you don't have a universal web browser for something like the PlayStation 4. But I think that there could easily be a popular app that's third-party in the way that you have Google Chrome or Firefox. And that could easily be on desktop VR browser, be the desktop VR browser.
Awesome. Addie Robertson is virtually and actually on TheVerge.com and on Twitter at @TheDextriarchy. Addie, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye. Got a little bit more news coming up right in just a second, but first let's talk about Gazelle, one of our sponsors today. And of course, I love Gazelle. I've been using them for a long, long time. I learned about them from an ad that Leo did long before I even worked here. And I've gotten a lot out of it, and it's just there's no downside to it. You know, the holidays are coming, and I've talked in the last couple of days about using Gazelle as the place where you do a lot of your holiday shopping. It's a great place to get great devices at a very affordable cost, and of course, it's guaranteed. They inspect everything. Great place to shop. But today, I want to talk about the environment. We're hearing a lot about the environment, and one of the biggest contributors to environmental waste is the electronics boom. There's so many electronics devices. Some of them are highly recyclable, and others are not. And cell phones are particularly problematic because they're filled with toxic chemicals. And the biggest problem in the environmental impact of smartphones is when people buy a phone, then they buy another phone, and they sort of hang on to the old phone because they think, well, I don't know how to recycle it. I don't know where to recycle it. I don't know if I should. I don't know what to do with it. Maybe it's got a cracked screen. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know what to do with it. But the fact is that the most environmentally friendly device is the one that's never manufactured. And the thing to do to keep these gadgets that we love so much from having such a bad environmental impact is to make sure that they stay in circulation for as long as humanly possible. Never allow a gadget to remain unused. If it's sitting around unused, sell it to Gazelle. You know, there was a big article in the New York Times that's dated today called How to Sell or Recycle Old Electronics. This great article by Brian X. Chen, who's a great writer, and he talks about the realities of electronic devices and how to sell or recycle them. And of course, right in the middle of, the centerpiece of his article is, of course, Gazelle. And he talks, he goes through his experience of selling a device to Gazelle. And it's clear from this article that it's super easy to do. They send you a box with a sticker, put the phone in the box, close it, put the sticker on, send it back. Super easy, get paid right away. His whole experience is exactly what I've been telling you about for the last couple of years. Super, super easy. And you really have to sell your old phone or tablet to Gazelle. It's the environmentally friendly thing to do. It's the right thing to do. And I highly recommend it. Give new life to used electronics. Trade in for cash or buy certified pre-owned. Visit Gazelle.com today. And we thank Gazelle for helping the environment and also for supporting Tech News Today. Well, the news you can use if you're a Verizon customer and a cheapskate, I've got some good news for you. Verizon will give you a free Star Wars-themed Google Cardboard viewer. Just walk into any Verizon store and ask. They'll continue the giveaway until they run out, which will probably be in a week or two. Maybe 3. I wouldn't risk it. Kevin Tofel, what are you seeing?
I'm browsing the web.
I see.
And wait, these are Star Wars? That's no moon?
Never settle. That's not an official Star Wars Verizon. I
didn't get there yet, and I don't want a 2-year contract with my my viewer.
You're afraid if you walk in there, you'll walk out with a 2-year contract wondering what happened.
Yep.
All right. Well, very, very cool. And the excitement around this movie is palpable. Unfortunately, when this movie debuts, I will be out of the country. And so I think I'm going to miss opening day, although I did see opening day of the original Star Wars. I'll never forget it. It was in Santa Barbara, California at the Arlington Theater, Santa Barbara's famous old movie palace. The line is the longest line I'd ever seen at the time. And it went down the street, around the corner, down that street, around the next corner. And I was standing in line like 2 blocks from the theater, just confused as hell about why this movie was engendering so much excitement. But anyway, I'm going to miss this one. So I'll have to watch it on my virtual reality goggles using the Samsung browser. That's not going to happen. Not going to happen. All right, Kevin. Well, Kevin is at Kevin C. Tofel on Twitter. I want everybody to go follow Kevin on Twitter. And Kevin, thank you so much for calling today, and we will see you very, very soon.
Sounds great. See you next week.
Bye-bye. Our TNT fan of the day is Craig in Calgary, Australia. Hard to say for this American, who's at home with a broken foot and watching lots of TNT and other Twitch shows on his new Apple TV 4. And there is the broken foot, and there is the Apple TV, and there we are. Very, very cool. Show us how you watch or listen to TNT, but don't break your limbs. Just record a video or take a picture of yourself or your setup and post it on Instagram, Google+, Twitter, or Facebook, and use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT so we can find it. You can subscribe to Tech News Today on YouTube. You can also choose your favorite way to subscribe at twit.tv/TNT. If you'd like to help us grow our audience, here's how you can do it. Just post a link to twit.tv/TNT on the social media site of your choice, tag 3 friends, and recommend that they subscribe. You can subscribe to our subreddit at technewstoday.reddit.com, and you can follow me on Google Plus by going to plus.google.com/plusmikeelgan. Also, don't miss our other news show, Tech News Tonight, at 4 p.m. Pacific every single weekday. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Tech News Today. The show is produced by Jason Clanthis and edited by Anthony Nielsen. My name is Mike Elgan. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.